Welcome everyone. We are here. Well, let me go back one. This is our February Equity Advisory Group meeting. Um, we are excited to be hosting this meeting today and recognizing and celebrating a couple of um, uh, sort of other celebrations and holidays that we hold this meeting amongst. We obviously want to recognize and continue to celebrate. We are in Black History Month, and we are also just on the tail end of well, the tail end. We've just passed the tail end of Lunar New Year's for folks that celebrate Lunar New Year. I know that that was momentous here. It's sort of like the back half of last week. Um, we also have, and I know that she may come on and say something or give a wave as acknowledgement as well, but we are also excited to welcome, for folks that know, C is a teacher at Western Washington and has invited her class, her advanced energy policy course, to observe today's meeting, which is such a great idea. I think that just makes so much sense for any students that are interested in energy and energy equity and policy. Great space to be. So we welcome you folks that are the students that are joining us today, and thank you for being here with us. Okay. So see a couple more folks from our team join or from our group. Say hi, Elizabeth. Hi, Monica. Cool. So as before we move further into agenda and getting us started, I'm gonna pass the microphone here over to Lisa to uh, do today's safety moment.
Thank you, Ishmael. Hello, EAG. Good to see you guys again. So just a quick safety moment so we can move along for our meeting. Again, this is a real-time scenario that happened here at PSC. So I guess first responder had a potentially hazardous experience with a headlamp that was left unattended in the seat. It overheated and it melted the seat cover. The employee had set the headlamp down and walked away for only approximately 2 minutes to return and discovered smoke coming from the seat. So the employee was able to extinguish the hotspot and prevented a fire, but just goes to show, be mindful of things that we're placing in our cars or things that are left unattended, plugged in. This is a safety warning. Just make sure that it's turned off if it's not in use. So I'll pass it back to Ishmael.
Thank you, Lisa. And again, just an acknowledgement, which we'll continue to acknowledge. Um, we've got, let's see, we've got several of these safety moments harkening back to real things that have happened. And so we learn and are grateful for the learning, but definitely also know that we don't want to repeat these things again. So that's why we sort of acknowledge our safety moments. Just before I transition, I can see, I think C has joined or is getting set up there. Oh, great. There we go. Awesome. Yeah, we love it. That's so great. So, thank you all for being here and hope that this can be informative and helpful. I'm sure it will be. All right, one more mic toss here. D'Amico, Washington, positions that were being sought filled to fulfill the needs and liaison positions working with tribes. I was on application, received notification, saying thanks, but those positions were no longer being considered. Yeah, and I mean that is the reality. We're having this meeting, and this work is it's always been highly contended and contested, and we take a bold risk because we think not only is it in the uh, we take a bold risk because we think it's in the best interest of um, not only each other as people, but the planet. And so we bring these two things together, and that's where we have this sort of environmental justice energy. And so to say that, to stand by that, to bring ourselves to that space with this being at the forefront. It's always contested. There's always scrutiny and pushback, and we know that especially now. So okay. Great. Well, thank you, Tamiko, and thank you, folks, and thanks, Chris, for weighing in there. And as always, I'm sure we'll be thinking about this moment as we go through the meeting, and there often is it's often the case that it resurfaces at other points in the conversation. Um, so on the theme, well, I guess I have my agenda slide. We have two primary things that we're doing in today's meeting. We're going to get an update here in moments from Troy on the general rate case update. The last time that we met, we got a little bit of a preview that we were going to come to this meeting with a little bit more organized, fleshed out review of the outcomes of the general rate case. And so Troy will do that here in a second. And then we will have the majority of sort of the back half of our meeting doing another follow-up, a continuation of our conversations from Brian Tyson and team, several folks from the team here today on minimum designation planning initiatives. The last couple of meetings, we've really focused on sort of understanding those definitions and terms, who falls within deepest needs and named communities. Then we had some information and reflection on sort of the data and sort of the baseline where we're starting from. Today's meeting, Brian will do the briefest of recaps on that because really we want to emphasize the initiative side part of this sort of sentence and the engagement and initiative side of the work. So those are our primary two objectives for today's meeting. We want folks to be active listeners, active participants. As facilitators, we will try to make sure that we're making enough space for back and forth for exchange, but we also want to try and make our way through our conversation and our topics. So we will be active as well. And for all observers, of course, we want to respect the Equity Advisory Group's time to discuss meeting topics. We will pivot to public comment period. And the instructions will be presented at the break. We will give folks the information if you're viewing this on the YouTube live stream and are motivated to speak during public comment period. You'll be invited to join the meeting at that point in time. I see Ariam with her hand up, which maybe means she's going to tell you better information than I am right now.
No, that's great information, as well as anyone who is joining us on the live stream. Please feel free to engage in the chat. Yours truly will be responding to the live stream chat, and we'll be trying to kind of connect the conversations happening on screen and in the YouTube live chat. So please feel free to drop your comments there, especially if you aren't able to stay until public comment.
Thank you, Aaron. Okay, Troy, and more on very recent current events. I'll toggle your slide as you'd like me to.
Okay, so my job today is to take this really comprehensive technical thing called the rate case order, which I think was about 150 pages. And remembering TJ, I'm going to put you on the spot, TJ's entreaty to make it understandable. So that's what I'm going to try to do. You've had a chance to read the slides ahead of time, so I'm going to go fairly quickly, but feel free to chime in the chat or with any questions that you might have. All right, here we go. So the general rate case, this is mostly inform, is the level at which I'm going to be engaging. What's a GRC? Who decides? What are the drivers and the rate impacts? What did the commission say about equity and affordability? And how does the order impact the work of the EAG? And then consult any comments, questions, I'll take those. Next slide. All right, so who are the decision makers on rates in Washington? These are the three commissioners. They're appointed by the governor, and they're the ones who make the decisions. Think of the rate case, as I'll get into it a little bit more, but think of it as a type of lawsuit. And these are the judges and staff, some staff from the commission. So PSC puts their case forward, the staff and other parties respond, There's a back and forth, cross-examination, all of that. And ultimately, these folks put in an order, which is their decision in the case. And then we all live with that until the next time we do this. Next slide. Okay, so as I prefaced, it's a legal proceeding where the commissioners determine fair cost to customers from most of our services. They look at prudency. Did the money we spend was prudent? Are we focused on safety and reliability? And then are rates in the public interest? So are they fair, just, reasonable, as well as affordable? And then recently, equitable was added based on state statute. And then considering other things like environmental impacts. So, like I said, a legal proceeding. Most parties have attorneys. The commission staff, as I mentioned, public counsel, that's a section of the Attorney General's office for the state of Washington, whose primary focus is on protecting consumers. And then there are other interested parties, the Energy Project, Joint Environmental Advocates, made up of a group of other organizations, the Alliance for Western Energy Consumers. These are large industrial type users. The federal agencies, we have a number of federal bases in the area, so they're large users as well. Nucor steel plant in Seattle that uses a lot of energy. Walmart, they've got a large footprint. Kroger, same thing. And then Microsoft as well. So this is a very robust proceeding. So I just want to make sure everyone sort of appreciates that this is a contested proceeding, and lots of lawyers, lots of really smart people, and fairly involved and technical. Next slide. So in this last rate case, what were the cost drivers of the case? A lot of investments needed to meet the clean energy statutes, and the increasing demand for electricity as the state electrifies. So that's a big driver. Reliability, grid modernization, dealing with the power markets that have been in flux, and then wildlife risk mitigation. So those are the main things that we're buying. And then increased cost to serve due to inflation. We're dealing with inflation just like everyone else. And as everyone, including the Googles and the others in the world who are all striving to find clean energy for their portfolios, we're all competing for the same things. And then interest rates, we finance a lot of our work. So interest rates affect our cost of doing what we do. So these are things that are causing the increase in costs. Next slide. So the commission attempted to balance support for those investments and keeping rate increases reasonable for customers. So who's impacted by the GRC? All PSC customers, electric and gas, residential, commercial, and industrial, which is why you saw some of the parties that participated. You can see this is a 2-year rate case, so you can see the increases as they are based on the different years. And then sort of the 800 kilowatt on the electric side and 64 therms on the gas side are sort of an average representative for sort of the mythical average consumer is what that is. And those would change depending on how much the customer uses. Next slide. So just some of the other parts of the case, the commission commended our approach to and progress on a few things: equity, affordability, as well as the implementation of the Climate Commitment Act. So a lot of that involved how did we make sure that the credits that we received as we sold those, that we were able to make sure that customers who were energy burdened and low income customers, I think is more accurate for me to say, received assistance to sort of mitigate the cost to them of the energy that they consumed. To the right there, you see a lot of our programs that we have to try to mitigate the impact of rate increases on our low income and energy burdened customers. In total, we are spending almost $120 million to support customers. And then the commission approved an increase of almost 26 million for the 2 years of the general rate case. We will be having a more in-depth conversation later on in the year about our affordability programs, who benefits, how they work, and all of that. And it's been very successful for us, but of course, there's still a lot more work to do. And I'm hoping that with engagement with you and others, we can improve the job that we do there. Next slide. So, as I said, this was a contested proceeding. So, we asked for some things and the commission agreed. We asked for other things and the commission didn't agree. So on what they agreed on, generally a lot of the capital spending, as I talked about earlier, that included our Beaver Creek Clean Energy Wind Project, the Baker Hydro Dam. It's very expensive to maintain and keep that dam operational and safe. And then generally our infrastructure, pipes and wires investment. So that's capital spending. I think you're all aware of what capital is. Tracking and recovery of costs associated with wildfire mitigation. Confirm the importance of our past due bill collection process. And then, following state guidance on energy burden formula, as opposed to creating a formula that then wouldn't provide consistency within the state across utilities. And then the things they didn't agree on, so accelerated depreciation for the gas system. The concern there is with sort of wealthier customers or customers with means being able to electrify, increasingly the folks who are left on gas would end up bearing a disproportional burden of those costs. And so cost to finance projects while they're being constructed. Commission didn't agree with us on that. Extension of our electrification pilot. There was some concern with 2066 recently passed that we talked about after the election. The commission had some concerns there and wanted to see how some of that plays out before agreeing to continue the electrification pilot. And then, there's two types of costs, right? There's capital that I talked about, and then there's O&M, operating and maintenance costs. The commission reduced our ask for those costs just to relate to the group. The cost to sort of manage the EAG, provide stipends, the uncommon bridges as a facilitator and all of that, those are operating and maintenance costs. Next slide. So I want to start on this slide on the right side there. Just thanking you, right? You're all volunteers. You all have sort of busy lives you're trying to manage. C's here with our class. D'Amico is in the classroom. uh, and so, you guys are, and you're not necessarily experts in any of this, but you're committed, you show up, you prepare, you engage, and I just want to thank you. I want to just say that the commission order itself mentioned the EAG 14 times and equity 126 times. Um, I will admit that while I've read the order a number of times, I did not do that math. I have to thank Kalima for that. Um, so, but I think just the commission acknowledging the work, and we don't oftentimes stop and say thank you, but I just want to start there. They focused on how well we're integrating the four tenets of equity. D'Amico mentioned restorative in the equity moment. I mentioned the work on the Climate Commitment Act programs, our work with low income and named community residential and small business customers. You'll hear some more work about small business customers later on in the meeting. Ongoing efforts to develop performance-based reporting metrics, including focusing on equity and affordability. You've spent some time engaging with our different distributional equity analysis and some of the pilot works there. And then our commitment to continue to translate information and materials for more programs and services. So more to come on those, but I wanted to make sure we took the time to appreciate that this commission, with all that it had to consider, really appreciated and applauded our work. Next slide. So more work, right? More work to do. How are we going to continue to advance equity? And I think the commission recognized that we are providing some leadership as an organization, including working with you. We're developing a number of best practices we're following in our work with you. And then there's specific work that we will need to engage with you further for the rest of the year on. As I mentioned, distributed equity analyses, there's some additional work there. You'll be hearing in the next meeting on the corporate spending authorization, demand response, performance incentive mechanism, something we'll be talking about, and then some procedural pieces, procedural justice pieces. There is some expectation that we follow the IAP squared engagement sort of model, and you saw me trying to model that already in terms of whether we're informing, consulting, involve, collaborate, and empower. And then we will continue with some of the interested parties to participate in the equity docket. And as that docket ramps back up, would love to have more engagement with the EAG as we go forward. Next slide. So I think C is the one that sort of called this out at one of our steerco meetings that we had, that affordability should be a key part of our equity strategy. Because even before all this work we're doing, we have customers who are energy burdened. And so making sure that we are focused on that. So some of the things that came out of that, the commission required us to have a independent facilitator for the low income advisory committee. That's modeled after the work that Uncommon Bridges is doing as an independent facilitator with the EAG. A formal language access plan. A number of you, Karia, have kept engaging with us around that need. We have a lot of different things that we're doing, but we'll be pulling it all into a formal language access plan and engaging with you and the LIAC on that. Our disconnection practices review, there is a recommendation and a requirement for us to submit some documentation and how we've collaborated with you. That's coming up fairly quickly. And then there's a arrearage and assistance docket for us to continue participating in that. Arrearages are, folks who are behind on their bills. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to pause there. I haven't been looking at the chat, but I'll let Ishmael sort of manage that. But I try to keep this at a fairly high level. TJ will tell me whether I kept it approachable and didn't get too technical. Like I said, we'll be coming back to a lot of these conversations throughout the year, and at your upcoming retreat, I will be creating some scenarios to help us think about how to think about incorporating equity into the work that we do and how to make this approachable so that you can actually have a conversation where you feel like you're able to make choices and decisions about what we should prioritize and all of that. So I'm looking forward to that conversation, but happy to take any comments or any feedback that you might have on this work. And for those of you who are so inclined, we provided you with a link to the actual order itself. And I don't want to put anyone in C's class on the spot, but it's the perfect kind of thing that would be great for someone who's a student to actually engage with that type of material. With that, before I get in any more trouble, I will stop. And Dennis. Dennis, I think the commission struck the appropriate balance. I think there are a few things that there still needs to be some ongoing conversation and engagement around. So I don't want to get in any trouble by precluding those. These things are always an ongoing engagement and iteration. But I think for the most part, especially if I focus in on the things that we're trying to do with you, I feel like there was a good balance there. And I think it sort of gives us what we need to continue to move forward and to continue to push the boundaries on excellence, right? I think we know that a lot of our neighbors still need assistance and still need help. And I think we're all in a position to provide the kind of engagement and guidance to make that happen. So I think if we can prioritize those things, we now have a way to move forward. So I'm pretty excited about that. I don't want to sidetrack the conversation, but in the spirit of your question, Dennis, I do want to acknowledge, especially to D'Amico's earlier comment, that the feds are seeing all of this very differently. And I think we need to make sure that we are thoughtful in sort of how we go about doing that. But I feel comfortable with where we are and sufficiently uncomfortable that I think we can continue to push the boundaries of getting a more a better experience for our customers all the way around.
Hey, Troy.
Yep, Marco, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm not able to raise my hand, but I just wanted to ask if there was an opportunity for us to engage on the language access piece.
Yes. We plan to engage with you and the LIAC on the language access plan.
Okay,
Chris,
thank you.
thanks, Marco. Go ahead, Chris.
Um,
That I will say that, you know, in the middle of all of the sort of the words that were written here, right, and the words that are in the GRC, you know, there are some real human moments, right? And I know for me and my team, this was our first GRC that we've gone through, and you know, I was sort of a witness in the case, which and one that they chose to cross-examine. So I spent almost an hour, you know, being questioned by attorneys. And, you know, it was not a fun experience. But, you know, that comes with the territory. And I would be, you know, happy to do it again because I think, you know, the outcome says a lot about what we're trying to do here together. So thank you for that. Something in the chat, Ishmael.
No, nothing in
Oh,
in our Zoom meeting chat.
okay.
Yeah, and I think yeah, really great questions and reflections. And I'll just allude to something really briefly here that I think something that is helpful that I'm sure folks, well, I won't say I'm sure, I would bet other folks might feel similarly is that the resolution of this case and being able to understand sort of where things are. Like I appreciate your question, Dennis, which in some ways I think is a question that the EAG can also sort of engage with, you know, on its own, where it's like, does PSC happy with sort of the outcome and does it have what we need? And so I think with all of this, we're trying to understand sort of the parameters and reign for this group and PSC to sort of be flexible, be creative, be innovative, to Troy's point around pushing excellence. So
Yeah, it looks like
great.
there's a hand
Yep, I
in
see it.
C's classroom, but Karia, I saw your comment in the chat, and yes, you will be one of the first people that we will be consulting when it comes to the language access plan. We will bring that to the entire EAG, but I know this has been something that you've been a leader on the group on, so definitely. Go ahead, C. Low income credits. So we have one of the things the commission called us out on is that we have been, they thought we were successful. We're proud of the work we did to make sure that we were able to provide direct assistance to customers through those credits. And so I think that's, you know, I don't remember the numbers, but I know that we reached a significant number of customers and provided them direct assistance with those dollars.
Okay.
Well,
Great.
Ishmael, if there's nothing else, I will hand it back to you and let you get on with the rest of the agenda. But since we do have a few minutes, if there's one more question I can take before I go, happy to do that.
I was just about to acknowledge the same. We're in a good spot if there's another question or reflection.
All right. Thank you all.
Everyone. Thanks, Troy. I
Oh, before I go,
oh, okay.
I do want to do an additional shout out. I mentioned Kalima earlier, but I would not have been able to complete this presentation without the heavy lifting that Kalima did to pull together all this information and then sit down with me a number of times to make sure that I had it right and that I wasn't making you know, rookie mistakes and things like that. So it was a lot of work, and I do want to make sure we give a lot of you who've met Kalima with presentations she's done in the past, but I do want to give her a shout out. So thanks.
Yeah, we can attest to that on our side from the amount of information that was in the order of course to being able to distill it here. Really well done, Kalima and Troy. Okay, we can move on before Troy assigns more homework to Z's class. We're doing well on time here, and I think what we can do is we can still take like a quick 5 here, and we'll get into the second half of our meeting. We're gonna hear from folks on the name community minimum designations, again with emphasis on the engagement. If we're really good on time, everyone, I'm looking at everyone, including PSC presenters, we can make a good amount of space for our discussion portions in this part of the conversation. So quick 5, if you need a moment, get some water, use the restroom. We'll be starting up. This says at 5:55, but see that as 5:50, 5:51. And for folks that are viewing online, please see instructions on the screen regarding public comment access if you're interested. So be back here in 4 or 5 minutes or so. Thank you. Right, folks. Just a brief one. I was sharing with Ariam earlier that in our office, one of our colleagues' daughters was selling Girl Guide cookies, and may or may not have had a handful in those 5 minutes. I don't need a lot of time to go through many of those. So here's what I did in my break. Maybe do something more restorative, but probably not as joyful. Okay, great. Let's as we see folks getting back on, thank you. We are going to move into our next piece here. We've got a couple of different things that we're talking about here. We've got a brief recap from Brian and Mandy. We'll introduce Mandy here in a second on minimum designations and named communities. We've heard from Brian in a couple of the past meetings from the EAG, and this continues to build on from those past meetings and dialogue to a place that we really want to get to today, which is talking about these outreach initiatives. So I will turn it over to Brian and Mandy to set the stage before we hear a little bit about these initiatives and get into discussion.
Excellent. Thank you, Ishmael. Good evening, everyone. Good to see you all again. Last time, I believe it was back in September, October, we had a conversation about minimum designation, and the conversation was so fruitful that we actually didn't get to the core content that we wanted to have a discussion on. So we have come back here, and as Ishmael mentioned, the focus of the conversation today is on some key outreach initiatives that PSC has undergone and is looking for direct feedback from you all related to our small medium business energy efficiency programming and our community solar programming as well. So we want to get to that. I've got a couple slides just to refresh some of the topics that we touched on back in late fall last year. So if we can go to the next slide. So as Ishmael mentioned, I'm going to go briefly touch on minimum designation, what it is, where it comes from, where it originated from, and some of our progress that we've made thus far. And then we've got a team that's going to come and discuss overall PSC strategy related to outreach. Manny's going to touch on that. And we've got a team that's going to deep dive into some specific programs. I think we're going to do some breakout groups, things like that. But I want you all to focus on the box on the right, which is we're thinking of how can we improve some of our strategies, our initiatives to really move forward and to improve our percentage in terms of energy benefits for minimum designation. And I'm going to touch on why that's important here shortly. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Oh, thank you. So this is a bit of background on where minimum designation, energy benefits, 30%. You may hear the teams use that language a number of times throughout the presentation, but essentially there are 2 orders with 2 different conditions related to how PSC needs to move forward in making sure that customers in highly impacted vulnerable populations and customers with the deepest need receive energy benefits. In this case, energy benefits are the megawatts or megawatt hours associated with a particular program. But the key here is that for named communities, which are highly impacted and vulnerable populations, the minimum threshold is at 30%. Okay, so we're trying to get to 30% across our DER, solar, DER storage, our demand response, our energy efficiency. Those programs, we're trying to move towards 30%. For our customers in the deepest need, the condition is really based on a proportional share of our current electric customer composite. Okay. Now, I'm going to go to the next slide, and you all have seen, well, this is a bit of definitions, but we can go to the definitions first. A bit of a recap, named communities, as I just mentioned, is defined as highly impacted communities and vulnerable populations. Those are both definitions that we have discussed in this group. Highly impacted communities defined by the Washington State Department of Health, and vulnerable populations, we have come together as EAG to really define those parameters. And then for customers with the deepest need, it's really focused on individual customers with severe energy burden. And all this to say is, when we think about our outreach initiatives, when we think about a minimum designation, we're thinking about our most vulnerable customers. We're thinking about our most severely impacted customers. So keep that in mind as the team comes up and talks to us about some of their outreach initiatives, because that's exactly where these initiatives are targeted and driving towards. Okay, next slide should be the breakdown. This slide you have seen because it's a breakdown of where we were in 2022 and 2023 for the programs, for the resources that we had programs for back then. So remember that 30% number, or that proportional share number. This is where we sat. Now, what we want to do after this is, now we want to talk about how do we close the gap if there is a gap, or how do we maintain our progress here or accelerate our progress given where we sit today. We think it's important to understand, where do we sit today? Now that we know that, now we want to move into a phase of talking about, well, what are the things we need to do as a company? What does that outreach look like? What specific communities do we need to go to and talk more about some of the programs, or just really provide some education and awareness of what is out there today? So I want to turn it to Mandy, because she's going to talk a bit about PSC overall. I think I've got one more slide before Mandy comes on, though. If we can go to the next slide. So some of the things that you see listed here are initiatives that we have already had underway before the minimum designation, and some have been done in concert with it. And so what this analysis showed us is that we had some lower participation rates in some of the energy assistance. We found that there were some demographers, whether it be renters, seniors, where we had lower participation rates in some of the programs as well. We found language, there was a barrier in terms of language, in terms of participation as well. But those key findings led to a lot of the initiatives and outreach that we've done before and that we're continuing to do today. Okay, so again, minimum designation is sort of the thread that we're pulling on, and now Mandy's going to talk a bit about our outreach initiatives overall, and then she'll pass it to Leslie, Ariel, and Chris later on. So let me go ahead and introduce Mandy.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here tonight. Happy to be speaking with you. I am Mandy Hill. I'm PSC's Manager of Marketing and Brand, and I support our education, awareness, and participation engagement efforts for PSC's programs, products, and our reputational communications. As an organization, we are continually looking to improve our customer engagement, reducing barriers, trying to support our deepest need customers and those in named communities. I really, really appreciated Amiko's equity moment. Recognizing and reducing barriers is absolutely the right thing to do for our customers. And we've got to do that to meet our obligation to increase energy benefits that flow to named communities and those with deepest need. So we know that we need all of our customers' support as we transition to cleaner energy. So the framework here on this slide, and I'll tell you, I just have one slide because really the meat of this is Ario, Leslie, and Chris speaking on some really good examples of how we're doing this work. But The framework reflects how we approach our communications and customer engagement work across PSE, using inputs, insights from community listening, from customers, really to reduce those participation barriers and move customers all the way through that funnel from awareness to participation and ultimately to loyalty, to get them to engage in more programs, to engage with us even more, to be able to take even more of the benefits of the clean energy transition. So really making our communications accessible through language transcreation, continuing to make more of our materials available in customer preferred language, working on that language access plan that Troy mentioned, simplifying our content wherever possible. That's really foundational to this work. There are several examples where PSE is moving in this direction. One of those is the DER empowerment pilot that you heard about at your last EAG meeting. That is really a true example of deep collaboration that we can use as a model going forward. Another example I'll speak to really quickly is the Small Change, Big Impact Energy Awareness Campaign, which was hosted this past fall. We used findings from our 2024 CEM public participation process to inform and design that campaign. It's really about educating our residential customers on energy efficiency and our demand response programs. That campaign had a real emphasis on Spanish speaking and Vietnamese speaking customers and communities, and really trying to reach them on channels that they told us were important. That was something like WhatsApp, which was new to us for our advertising, our engagement efforts, radio, which we do use, but wanted to use in these communities with content that was translated and transcreated specifically for these audiences. So really wanting to infuse these voices into the campaign messaging. So up next, Leslie, Ario, and Chris will speak to this in their sections of the presentation, but our approach is really to try to bring this engagement work, what we're learning, what we're hearing into our engagement work, whether that's through a more formal public participation process, whether that's through insights that we're hearing, being out in communities through our more high-touch outreach work. What you'll see from them in the next few slides really represents where PSE is doing customer engagement differently because of what we are hearing and what we're learning from the EAG, what we're learning from others in communities, and really those who are in these communities, and we're able to bring those insights back into our work. So our hope is to bring this approach to new audiences like our small, medium business, small industrial customers, which Ario will touch on, and ultimately extend these learnings across all of our customers. But with that, I'll turn it over to Leslie, unless there are any questions for me. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mandy. Hello, everybody. It's nice to be here and be part of this meeting. Thanks so much for taking time with us. So I'm here to tell you about some in-person outreach engagements that we did about this time last year. And part of the reason why I want to tell you about it is to get your feedback in general, but also to let you know that we have budget and we have plans to do something similar like this again this year in just a few months. And so as I'm telling you about what we did, I'd love for you to be thinking about what we could have done differently and how might we, or how we might be able to improve on what we've done. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And great, thank you. So in late 2023, and then in the first quarter of 2024, we opened about 3,000 no-cost income-eligible community solar shares for subscription. And so for context, each share was going to save customers about $240 each year that they're in the program. Our income-eligible community solar shares are, we take our customers at face value. If they tell us that they qualify, it's a low barrier to enroll. They just say, yes, I qualify, and we sign them up for up to 2 shares. So since we've launched community solar in 2021, our strategy has been consistently to reach native Spanish speakers through dual language marketing tactics. And we have everything we do is transcreated into Spanish as well. But for this big event where we added 3,000 shares. We wanted to think bigger too. And so we added high touch in-person outreach events where our team set up tents at popular and independently owned Latino markets to have like a high touch conversation with customers in a place where it was convenient for them. One of the things that made this especially special to us is that this was really a partnership with the markets too. We worked with them to allow us not only to set up on their property and to be in their space, but to promote the events at their locations over Spanish radio. Some of them also allowed us to add signage throughout the stores so that we could increase engagement with the families as they shopped. And so in our eyes, this was really a great start. We are planning, we don't have 3,000 shares again this time, so we've got a much smaller pool of shares for this time around. However, we want to expand not only to do it again at Latino markets, but also to consider adding some Asian markets and doing this potentially in Vietnamese as well. So I think, is there another slide? I can't remember if there's another one on my section or if this is my one slide.
It's this one. The next one's your questions.
Okay, great. Let's go ahead and go to the questions. So, we did it education first, like that was our approach. We did it conversation first. We, brought in Spanish radio and, we were partnering with small businesses that we had some relationships with, and some of those relationships were new. But like, what does this group think, like if you had the opportunity to rethink this or to do some sort of like negotiation, well, maybe did you think about this? Did you think about that? I would love to hear from this group. And also like anything is on the table. Like we're thinking grocery stores because I'm thinking convenient shopping experience. But is that the right place to go? Are there other places that would be a better fit for the demographics that we're trying to reach? Or are there specific times? Like another idea I had was like, if we want to reach seniors, maybe we should do this during like quiet shopping hours, things like that. So I'm really open to any kind of feedback and ideas. And our hope is to just make it better this time and to continue to see good results.
Thanks,
Okay,
Leslie.
I'm looking at the chat.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll move the slide back. And I think I was actually thinking about this as you were talking, and Monica's question is it basically. Monica's asking, what did you find was the most effective outreach method? Maybe if you can just share a little bit around sort of some of those findings, can help people sort of do some of those trade-offs or weighing up opportunities.
Yeah. So we brought community solar. We bring them to events and try and market them, and a lot of outreach efforts. Any kind of like community event that we're going to be at. But what we found to be really effective was to do it outside of special events like like a community center or a community resource or something like that, or like a farmer's market or something like that, and really kind of try and bring it someplace where it was convenient for the people to meet them in a place where they were already going to be, and not something that they might specially have time to do. Thinking that if you've got time to go to a farmer's market, that might be a little bit different than if you're like running your errands on the weekend and as part of your regular routine. We have not done Spanish-speaking TV to advertise. We did add on the radio this time as a way for people that aren't seeing this chat. The question is, did we think of using Spanish TV? We haven't done that. I would have to check out the budget and see what something like that could cost. The Spanish radio was very popular. Like we got really good response from that. We got a lot of interest. I think the slide probably said it, 6 different media engagements. So we felt really good about that. Not only were we advertising on the radio, but we were interviewed on the radio. And so that felt like good coverage, but we could certainly look into TV and see if we could do something on the budget.
Thanks,
Do people
Leslie.
like this idea of like the groceries, the during your routine or during, like time does this seem convenient? I mean, sometimes when I'm going to the grocery store, I don't really want to talk to anybody, but does this seem like a convenient or a good idea?
I just want to invite folks to unmute, jump in. Appreciate.
Yeah, we had a great partnership with El Centro de la Raza earlier last year too.
I wanted
Couple-
to
The
add,
events-
Linda, you
Um,
go first. I see a couple of comments in the chat. Leslie, I'll read them out just so folks in the YouTube sphere can also just know what's being posed here. So, follow-up question from TJ around just the experience, anticipation of fears, concerns from immigrant communities given current political climate, or maybe how you or the team has managed that sort of balance of people's feelings or how they anticipate doing so.
Yeah, that is something that we've talked about even before the current political climate. It's definitely gotten worse in the last 6 months. It's something we talk about as far as like preparing and planning. And I think it's something that is one of the reasons why we wanted to do it at a place where people were already at or already going to, and we wanted to do it at a place in language with native Spanish speakers and not try and, you know, talk to them and get people to talk to, I unfortunately only speak English. And so we wanted to do it in language. We wanted to do it in a place where people were already at and feeling safe and comfortable. I think that it will continue if it to be a point and something that we should probably really kind of take into account and plan for when we're kicking this off with the teams that would do the work, and make sure that they feel comfortable with what they're talking about, and feel comfortable maybe providing a level of, you know, just like helping to build the trust in that moment. I think it's something that.
Oh, thank you. See, I was going to go to those comments. I appreciate you seeing that and deferring to that. So I guess I'm seeing a couple of things. I'll read them out, but then just sort of try and connect them. And there's a specific question here as well. So Leslie, you asked around sort of, is this a good approach? What do folks think about sort of the grocery store, that option? There's a little bit of a balance here in the chat. There's Monica was saying that community events feels like something that maybe people can take their time with and actually sort of like sit into, as opposed to grocery stores where maybe people are, at least Monica said she herself feels like she's usually rushing at the grocery store. So sort of like making the most of a moment. However, Dennis's point is that grocery store provides an efficient venue to gain exposure. So I feel like for me, what I'm hearing there is that it's like requires a sort of multi-pronged approach, and recognizing the sort of like how far and the potential of a certain touch point can be. A grocery store might be good for someone to pass by, grab a flyer or a postcard, and a event is something that people can maybe go back and forth a little bit more. Just based on what was said there in the chat is sort of my interpretation there. And there was a specific question about Spanish-speaking Facebook groups in the area and whether PSE is utilizing, I suppose, Facebook or any other of the social media that's dedicated Spanish language.
I don't have any experience using or advertising with the Facebook groups. I might want to bring Mandy back on if she's got an answer for that. I'll definitely, but if not, that's fine too. I'll take that as a note, something to look into for sure.
We have done some of that in the past. I think where we're looking at adding those capabilities through some of our agency partners and others, we want to be careful that we can manage the two-way conversation, right? That's what social media is about, being able to have a conversation. So making sure that we have folks on the team that can actually respond and be helpful on social media when we do advertise or do organic content there. So it is something that we have done before and are looking at expanding our capabilities there.
Thanks, Mandy. And then as far as the debate between grocery stores and community events, I totally get the point. Yeah, for sure. I think that like when we're bringing in, like we're making sure that we've got people that speak. It depends on what the event is, and we want to make sure that we've got people that are speaking the right language, and we're able to target at grocery stores. But I can see, as mentioned, I also am sometimes rushing around and don't have time to talk to somebody that might want to talk with me. So something to consider for sure. Part of my thinking about the grocery stores too, and I'd welcome feedback or pushback on this, is that when I think about community events, I think that that's people that might have more time, or when I think about or people that are already have the time to do that, or have the time to get the resources, whereas everybody goes to the grocery store. And so I just think that that's where we're going to get the people that really maybe we don't get to talk to at a community event. But I'll take the feedback either way. But that was just my thinking on that.
Yeah. Thank you everyone in the chat. C, now is your moment. Thank you for your patience.
Income eligible. Yes, there are 80% AMI or 200% of FPL are the requirements. We don't require any paperwork. We take, the personal attestation that they qualify. And we also, when we were marketing this, we also had regular general shares available for customers that wouldn't qualify. Those are $20 a share. So that was part of it. We were prepared to talk about both.
There's
typing
there's a good, nice, Leslie. There's some good reflection, and I think I'll sort of tie these together. And then Leslie, I wonder if you could just share sort of what you heard. What do you think, how it informs what you're thinking about next, and then yeah, we'll pivot here to hear about the emphasis on
So,
small and
Ishmael-
medium business customer. Yeah, go
Ishmael,
ahead.
if I could
Sure.
just take a second here. I just wanted to provide a follow-up to TJ's question and Leslie's response about outreach. So we have had discussions internally about concern we had from some of the outreach team about having people come to events that could be then targeted by ICE. So the initial guidance we're providing to employees is if they have concerns about that, we would prefer them to not go ahead with the activity, especially if they feel like that's a concern. So that's something I just wanted to make sure we clarified. And we are planning to sort of keep track of that to see how we might need to think about that more intentionally in the way we change some of these things, because as great as some of these face-to-face efforts are, we don't want to put our employees or the community at further risk. So just wanted to provide that additional context.
Yeah, I think there's in seeing some of the comments in the chat, and I saw Dennis pose a similar sort of reflection there. Immigrant populations are going to be more guarded in the future with regard to standing out by asking for help and participating in additional businesses and official databases. And Karia was making some really great points around the difference between just sort of the high visibility, getting in front of people with the actual start to finish completion of access to resources. And so, kind of a little bit what C was saying earlier, I know it wasn't necessarily in that context, but being able to try and, it sounds like, think about the nuances of what people, not just their time, but the likeliness of being able to actually have uptake into the resources is highly dependent on a lot of factors. And one of the realities is this factor around how comfortable are people going to be, visibly.
Channels, maybe not just in person. The Facebook Live was an example, or TV, if we can, TV, continuing the radio. It sounds like there's also interest in doing this at community events where people have more time to have, to engage more, participate, or partnerships with CDOs. So it sounds like the crux was, it was a good use of time, expand it into additional channels to reach even more people, not only to reach them, but also to reach them in a way that they feel safe and that they can engage. I also took notes about better prep, and it sounds like Troy already has some guidance that we're thinking about there, better prep for before we do any kind of like in-person community event, so that, you know, we can make sure that people feel, again, safe, and that our teams feel safe too, doing this work. And, you know, and then thinking about life seasonality, I loved that term, and the different places that people might be at different points in their life. So if we wanted to get with seniors, the quiet shopping, but also maybe like some medical clinic, the pharmacy, and places where people are standing in line and might be interested in engaging and filling some of that time. If I missed any key points, please put it in the chat or send me a message, and I will take it from there. We are looking to do this work probably again in April, May.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Leslie. I know you said that at the outset. You were making it really clear that there's a real opportunity here. This is not just a reflection on what happened, just to reflect, which is also useful. It's to improve for the next go around. Thank you, Leslie, for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks
for your time.
For the next sort of example and specificity around, I like how Mandy said, sort of bringing our engagement to new customers was something that, or to new audience is something she said earlier. We have Chris and Ario who will talk a little bit about focus on small and medium-sized business customers. So Chris, I think I'm starting with you. Is that right?
It's actually Ario is the
It's
start.
Ario.
Yeah,
Ario's
Ario.
name is first. I should have just read it.
50-50
Yep.
chance.
There we go.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ario Salazar. It is my pleasure to be here today with you. I am the product manager for all equity-related initiatives within the customer energy management team. That long CEM acronym basically boils down to we are in the conservation dash energy efficiency side of things here. And so today we will be speaking about some of the previous public participation engagements, what we were setting out to do, learn, etc., right? And then basically how we are stacking up the learnings and the gleanings we have gotten from these previous public participation engagements to now infuse the same methodology and approach into the next segment, customer energy management or conservation. We deal with residential, small, medium businesses, and CNI, which is commercial and industrial size customers as well. So briefly, I'll say this slide that we're looking at here. In 2023, there was a equity forum that PSC staged in specifically Skagit County. It was one of the two locations at the time where these equity forums were happening. And through the engagements that happened in 2023, we learned that there was definitely a lot of appetite and fertile soil, no pun intended, in Skagit County to actually learn more about PSC's equity initiatives, right? And all of the different bundled up offerings that PSC has for customers on the residential side of things. We focused on residential customers at the time because in 2023, that's when we learned about the new condition, right, of eking out definition for who was to be named customers with deepest needs. So that immediately put a great deal of urgency and really focus on this new customer segment and designation. And so what we knew was that the assumed language in Spanish was, in Skagit County was Spanish, right? But through some of the research that we conducted in the region, we also discovered that there were about 14 other indigenous languages from the northern part of Guatemala and the southern part of Mexico present as part of the population that provides services specifically in the agricultural industry in Skagit County. So what PSC wanted to know was, are we being inequitable if we are not providing promotional materials, collateral, right, or any outreach events in any of those languages? And so when we engaged in throughout the year in these public participation engagements in Skagit County, what we learned was that actually Spanish is the main vehicle for these communities to have a conversation about anything, simply because it acts as a lingua franca. Because the languages, they're not even dialects, they are languages, right? The languages are so different from one another that actually in those communities, many times they themselves engage in Spanish as the main vehicle for communication. On top of that, we also learned about some of the alternative channels that Mandy mentioned in her presentation, right? WhatsApp, radio for sure. In-person events also was deemed as one of the most effective and most culturally sensitive ways to connect with these customers. And all of that feedback that we received and all of the findings were actually infused into the campaign that Mandy mentioned earlier as well. One of the key pieces of feedback that we received from these customers in this particular set of public participation engagements was that they actually provided the idea. I think they said, somebody said in some of those conversations, I think you'll get more participation if you have a call for action for us, right, to participate in. Once they had learned about October is Energy Efficiency Awareness Month. And so that's kind of how we came up with the idea of having customers submit a pledge for energy conservation during that month. So we are very glad to report that we received over 1,700 pledges for energy conservation, and they tell us a story of all of the things that customers are valuing and basically where they feel they can have a space and a place and a role to play, right, in the transition towards the clean renewable future. So that is what these, the main, again, right, nuggets and gleanings were from that particular set of public participations. And if we move to the following slide, that is also what in the same year, in Q4, which is basically from October through December, we started having preliminary conversations with businesses up north as well in Whatcom County. So we did residential customers in Skagit County, and in Whatcom County, we started having these conversations. And here are some of the preliminary findings that we have, in addition to some of the research that PSC has continually done year after year to learn and understand more about what are some of those pain points, the barriers, and also what the opportunities are. So I'll begin from the bottom. Essentially, for the small, medium business customers and the small industrial customers, time is of the essence. The biggest barrier is that these customers, as you are seeing from the direct quote over there, right, they work in and on the business 24/7. So for them, having a clean, straightforward solution that tells them what's available, how they can participate, what the benefits are, and how that actually is going to benefit their business growth or plans, that is what they're really after. Because clearly, as they've said, right, keeping a business afloat is a lot of work. And then there, on the socioeconomic and the cultural factors for vulnerability, we also have come across this actual confirmation finding, right, that for many business owners, they are either skeptical or some of them are unaware outright of the offerings and the benefits, right? So it's clear that we still have a great deal of opportunities and growth to be experienced in the domain of education and awareness for this particular segment. One of the recommendations they've made in some of these preliminary conversations is that they say, give me a 2 to 3 minute, right? Remember, time is of the essence. Give me a 2 to 3 minute video that tells me what are the main programs that I may benefit from, how to access them, and then really what is the streamlined process for me to then start participating. And then akin to what happened with the residential customers, we know that their main channels of communication are through internet, flyers, social media, friends or colleagues in their guild or sector. And one thing that also we missed over here, I missed noting here was their chambers of commerce or guilds associations newsletters, right? And having inserts there, that also has come forth as one of the main ways for these customers to be aware and to be at a minimum educated a tad on what it is that PSE has to offer to them. So with these preliminary findings in mind, I'm going to actually now pass the mic here to Chris, who can tell you a little bit more in depth about some of the ongoing, I guess, initiatives and efforts that we have with these customers. And he'll also share with you an example of a very successful and unique partnership that our hope is to be able to scale things like that across the territory.
Awesome. Thanks, Ario. That last quote is kind of the overriding, the quote at the bottom of that slide is kind of the overriding thing that we've been working with in the small business world with our outreach. Ishmael, could you go to the next slide, please? One of the programs that has been most successful over the years is what's called our Small Business Energy Assessment Program, or Small Business Direct Install. It's a program to do exactly that, to meet the small business owners where they are and help them directly improve the efficiency of their building. The program works. Customers can sign up for the program in multiple ways. They can come to our website or call. We also are in the community with our outreach staff and can sign customers up for a Small Business Direct Install. We also do a really unique Blitz program where we will choose a main street, area of a downtown in our service territory, and we will flood that area, go business to business, offering the small business energy assessments. And what the assessment is we'll come in, look at your lighting, your heating, your water heating, and give you an idea of where you're at. And then we will also directly make low and no cost upgrades immediately, so the customer doesn't have to go through the process of finding a contractor and applying for a rebate. It's just all there. You need new lighting. Well, here you go. Here's what we can do with lighting. We can get you into new lighting. So it's very easy for customers to participate. And additionally, we give customers a guide through the process of accessing all our other PSC programs and benefits that work towards with small and medium businesses. It's been a very successful program. The program's been operating for 12 years and impacted over 6,900 customers and saved over 94 million kilowatt hours. Kind of as we've kind of worked through these last few years, we've been really looking to really center equity in what we're doing and find some unique ways to work with different community organizations. One of the first ones we've had a lot of success with is the Korean American Grocers Association. So in 2023, we started interacting with KAGRO to find ways to improve outreach with businesses in their network. We signed up for sponsorships in 2024, which included being in their newsletters that they send out, their magazine, as well as attending any events that they put on for their members. And as we've built trust and gained momentum with the Korean American Grocers Association, we've really discovered new ways to work together. A good example is we were invited to give out information in their text stream that they have for members, which is really cool. It was not something that we were originally planning on doing, but with our increased trust, they wanted us to do that. The KAGRO leadership also has helped us create promotional communications to provide culturally sensitive and accurate information. It's been a really positive experience working with them, and kind of we're looking to see if this is something that we can replicate with other community-based organizations in our service territory. Cool. And then I'll hand it back over to Ishmael to kind of coordinate the questions.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, and thanks, Mario. So again, I really liked how Mandy framed that up earlier of sort of bringing our engagement to new audiences. So Chris and Ario have just shared here a little bit on again, and Brian teed up from earlier, we're talking within named community, and we're talking within customers with the deepest need, and there's an emphasis on small and medium-sized businesses. So I wanted to just share on the screen. We're not doing this as a breakout, but there has been some considerations from PSC as they look ahead to sort of approach. But I would say that I think a way to fold up what is here and what is actually again this next set of questions, and Chris, you can underscore this as people start talking, maybe is there's overlaps. Chris just spoke to the like cultural overlaps, which we were just speaking about earlier in Leslie's portion as well. So there's always going to be overlaps on sort of the like cultural perspective or language perspective, geography perspective, and still we're trying to be deliberate, or PSC is trying to be deliberate about the fact that we are outreaching to small, medium-sized businesses. And so as you think about the partnerships that PSC is considering, Enterprise for Equity, Korean American Grocers Association, the example that Chris just shared, Ethiopian Community of Seattle, Building Owners and Managers Association, BOMA, the Muslim Association of Puget Sound. There's a way to think about partnerships. There's also, if you look at the bottom there, some geographical areas, Auburn, Kent Valley, Sumner, South King County areas that we know that there is higher density of, especially a variety of business types and business and industry. And so um, between sort of the partnerships, the locations, and then I think on this slide, something here again at the bottom is if we think specifically about women and minority-owned businesses, for example, how does that change or help or influence or add to the approach, and whether there is a reason, justifiable reason to sort of segment within the customer base here, depending on types of businesses, location, language, etc. So I know that folks have access to these slides. We can take a look at these questions. We're not going to use them in a breakout, but I think just sort of folding all of that up. Curious if there are additional questions from the AG or other reflections as PSC thinks about its outreach and engagement, again, within named communities and customers in the deepest need, but that are small and medium-sized businesses.
I think specifically, just to maybe prompt a little bit more, one of the things that I'm very curious about is, we worked with Korean Grocers Association, and that bottom question, is that the right way to do it? We've also done locations with the blitzes where we're focusing on a specific downtown area. And are there other ways to kind of break out how we should organize our conversations with businesses?
Thanks, Chris. Go for it, Dennis. Thank you.
Like that idea, and just for referrals, you're talking about. So if the business can get us incentives with residential customers, kind of making sure that the business has some kind of benefit for helping create that connection.
The Dennis, that you're linking it's sort of making this thing approach a little bit more holistic, and not segmenting sort of the residential and business, that there's an opportunity to think about the way people interact with it all together.
Yeah,
Great.
you've got votes in the chat, and then
I-
also Amy's hand is up.
Yep. I saw a couple of the chat first, and then we'll go to Amy and then back to the chat. And I don't know, Monica, you have a couple of points in here, so I don't know if you are in a position to come off mute to speak to what you've got here.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, really great, Monica. Thank you. Now we'll go to Amy, and then we'll go back into some of the chat pieces.
If anybody else has any other organizations that they know about that they think would be good fit for us, please let us know. We're definitely open to organizations. I love the the welcome packet idea that you just put out. That's really cool.
Yeah, and I think I'm just to acknowledge in the chat that there's several organizations being listed. And actually, I want to ask Glenda first, because you shared a link in the chat around at least a resource to the Department of Commerce working with CBOs who support small businesses. So I just wonder if you can speak more to that, or if you have anything else to add on that, or to illuminate. I think there's a trend here from folks' feedback, but I don't know, Glenda, if you have anything you want to add on that piece. D'Amico, I saw you come off mute. Are you jumping in? Oh, your audio is not coming through. It seems like it looks like you're off mute. but for some reason you can't hear you. Oh no. Yeah, try again. Be on off and on again. Oh, that's so strange. We can't hear you come through. If you're not able to figure it out, I think you can try and select your microphone if that isn't something that you're already trying there. The little like arrow next to the microphone icon on Zoom to make sure that you've got the right microphone selected from what you're using. But if not, if you type into the chat, I can reach in. And also, Monica shared in the chat and said that she's also very happy to be involved and supportive, that her org is focused on certain sectors of small businesses and already done outreach to Spanish-speaking organizations. So it looks like there's a good network, Chris, that is already sort of established. And on that point, Elizabeth also shared in the chat, the org I work for partners with the Center for Inclusive Entrepreneurs, CIE, and the Latino Education and Training Institute, LETI. They have great outreach and may have contacts in the area of focus. So, yeah, that's awesome. Look at everyone running to help figure this out. Just as we're looking at time here, I'll go back to you, Chris. Just final reflections from what you've heard. What are the gears going right now?
Just
What are you thinking about next?
Lots of gears going. I'm thinking my first step is going to be to get all of these different the different leads that you guys have to figure out exactly what the best way to go about prioritizing those and starting to reach out. I've got some great ideas. I love the idea of the welcome package. I heard in there also about creating some type of cohort style that might be more effective than just individual conversations, which I really like. Yeah, it's really, and then working with distribution, that was another one that I had not thought about, which is silly because I used to work in distribution in the electrical industry, but I hadn't related it to small business. But I'm very interested to look at that and see what possibilities are there. So thank you so much for all the feedback. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. And I'll add just from another one to that. I really liked, where the conversation started with Dennis about sort of how this connects to the residential customer as well. That's a good full circle. Well, great. Thank you. I'll just want to say as we sort of I'll keep this up on the oh, my computer doesn't want to go. There we go. Okay. As I'll leave this up here, I know that Ariam has been watching both the chat here and on the YouTube in case there are folks that have joined and in the waiting room. So we'll keep that open while sort of close here. But yeah, I just want to say appreciation to Chris and to Ario and to Mandy and Leslie and Brian. And this is a great sort of continuation from the conversation we had in the last meeting. There's a lot of opportunities to help sort of sync up the variety of ways that engagement can be done really well. Again, I don't want to be a broken record, but I'm really resonating on Mandy's point of bringing this approach to new audiences. It's like new approaches and new audiences. And so
I just wanted to briefly say thank you to everyone. This is my second time connecting with the EAG, and it's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Ario.
Wonderful. Still no public comment, no nothing in the chat. I'm really excited that 24 unique viewers joined us this afternoon and evening. And so that's exciting. And we even got a like on our YouTube channel, which is the first since I've been managing the YouTube. So go us. Really exciting stuff. And I think we've got some reminders, and I've got a few. We may be influencers, we may be going viral. But yeah, I've got some reminders that I'll drop in the chat, as well as whenever you pull up our next steps page.
I'll keep the next steps. Why don't you keep going, Ariam?
Beautiful. So our next EAG meeting is on the 17th. We have of March. We have in between then we do have a steering committee meeting coming up on the 3rd of March. But most excitingly, we have a save the date that's going to come out tomorrow for March 29th, 2015, which is a Saturday, between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. You're asking if you can hold your calendars. We will be in the South King County, Auburn area, working to get our location finalized. It is a hybrid event. We're encouraging people, if you can, to attend in person and working to supplement and support that, but there will be an opportunity to attend hybrid. All of those details will be in a save the date coming out tomorrow. So this is an announcement about our save the date. Once we get the venue totally secured, we will send that information as well. The video of this live stream, typically we've been aiming around the following Tuesday. Our lovely colleague here, Carson Bridges, who is here tonight taking great notes, he helps us to edit and clean up everything, and then they upload to the site. And I usually try for the Tuesday after the meeting. So sometimes we're able to get that earlier, and if so, we will definitely let you know. My final pitch to everyone is to sign up for your one-on-ones this month. We're going to be doing some chatting about the agenda for our governance retreat, some of the soon-to-be chat items in our Google groups about our bylaws and charters, and just really encouraging folks to re-engage with those foundational documents as we come up to our governance retreat, and some specific discussion questions that will be able to float in the chat, but also want to talk to you all one-on-one. So please sign up for your one-on-ones this month. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Yep, save the dates coming out. If you'd like to throw it on your calendar now, it's a great time. It will be via an Eventbrite, and so which will allow us to continue providing updates on the event as we go along, and we'll have a place where you can keep all the details about our retreat in one place. Food will be provided twice, I think. We'll have kind of a nosh session at the beginning, and then we'll have a full lunch. We're going to make sure that people who are attending virtually are also able to join us in fellowship with food, and making arrangements to make sure you all are taken care of, even as you attend virtually. So, yep.
And
Yeah.
transportation is also
Mhm.
we can talk about that to provide that as well for
Yep, transportation
would like to.
support. The registration link, we're building out a set of questions that will just really help us to double check on some of the things we asked in the poll about accessibility and any support needs, and all of that. And then shout out to Lisa at PSE, who is the coordinator extraordinaire, who's going to help us get all of our venues and caterers and all that together for the 29th.
Thank you, everyone. We're done. We're adjourned. This was great. We had some wonderful feedback and conversation. We'll be in touch with you, as Ariam said. Be well, have a good night, and till next time.